You ready?
I am, sure. Oh, wait, what is this doing? This me? Oh, okay.
Hey guys, welcome to the As the Leader Grows podcast. I have got a special treat for you. My good friend, Allison Lager. She is one of the top therapists in New York City. Really making a difference in a ton of clients' lives. She's got a top level podcast where she talks about, personal growth, therapy, all of the things that she does. I don't know that I've ever had anybody on the call. It's 11:35. We've been talking for 30 minutes before we even went live on the podcast.
Exactly.
So, Allison, girl, tell everybody a little bit about what you've got going on and how everything's going in your world right now.
Okay, here I am. Hi, everyone. How are you? I just want to tell you, Ken, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I learned so much from you, and I just value this time that we have together. I really appreciate you. I can go in so many different directions. I can tell you what I'm doing now, and I can tell you how I got here, which I think that's usually what I ask people. How the hell did you get here? And, do you want me to give a little background? A little bit of me?
Yeah, tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing right now. Like,
okay,
what does the world look like in Allison Lager's life right now, and kind of the impact you're having, and then we'll get to how you got to making that impact.
Wonderful. So basically, I am a therapist, and I own counseling centers. So I have art therapists, psychiatric nurse practitioners. I have all different types of therapists that work for me. But I initially began as a therapist by profession, and I had 8 years of college, and I did all of that stuff. And I'm not supposed to do my background, but I'm throwing a little of that in.
Come on.
Because none of that really matters as much as my personal experiences that really gave me the education. So just my practice just always grew, and it just never stopped, and I just let it. That's what I did. I just let it. And what ended up happening was I just would start to open new locations. I currently have 3, and I'm opening up another one. And what I've done, which I thought was neat, is I started to decide to buy the property underneath it, kind of like McDonald's, And so to own the property and then rent the property from them. And what we really do, we're more of like a mental health movement. So what I found in being in school, all the way that I was trained, the different therapists that I know, we have been trained to be more blank, kind of have these, boundaries, like a lot of stuff that we just are not. So we run with core values here that are very warm, like we're very welcoming, and we roll up our sleeves, and we never ask our clients to do anything that we wouldn't do. So, and what this is really based on, like, basically people come in with symptoms, all different problems. It doesn't matter what they are, because we do everything: eating disorders, anxiety, depression, everything. And what I tell everybody who works for me is that people come in with their symptoms, and then the symptoms are alleviated, a lot of therapists are like, okay, therapy's over. Insurance is like, we don't pay anymore. But that's when we step on the gas. So that's when we're like, okay, where do you really want to be in your life? Because honestly, getting rid of the symptoms is step 0. It's nothing. It's
just getting them back to ground level, if you will.
That's it.
Yeah, you're getting them out of the hole and getting them back ground level.
Exactly. So we believe in like excellence and dreaming as big as you can and getting as far as you can. And people, and we want, so I kind of train all my therapists. So that's like a big part of what I do, is like to help. I felt like God showed me years ago that I'm going to be a minister to the ministers. So, and that's a lot of what I do. I help people who help people, because I don't really, what, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question real quick. So most therapists, it's just about the issue. If you got an eating disorder, I'm going to help you not have an eating disorder. Hey, I like my Hydro Flask too. If you've got whatever the issue is, whether it be some kind of mental thing that you're dealing with, whether it be depression or anxiety, once we get that done, like you just said it just a minute ago, we're done with you. What in you said, like, that's not enough? Like, that's really the building or the starting point with your clients. What in you calls you to be that way?
Well, I can tell you it's a little bit of a backstory, but from the time I was a little kid, I have always dreamed big and saw big. So if somebody said, oh, I want to get a used car, I'd be like, why don't you just ask for a brand new car? Or, I want this in my life. I'm like, well, why don't you have like a much bigger thing than that? So I feel like my whole mission is about waking people up to like break out of this automated state of mediocrity that all of us are in, that we don't even realize there's all these apps playing in the background and it's white noise. So the thing that drives me to do it is my own personal life. I have had so many, I literally could laugh about it because it sounds like I'm making it up. I've had so many different tragedies happen in my life throughout my whole life, trauma, different experiences. And I am honored to have had them. And I'm not kidding, because I feel special to have had them. And it brings a little tear to my eye, because I think God doesn't see pain the same way that human beings see pain. And I see the different experiences that I have had has been my training ground. Can I tell you a quick story about?
Sure, yeah.
So I wrote a book. It's not launched yet, but when I was writing that book, it was supposed to launch like a year ago, but when I was writing it, I was writing all about, how to get better and how to have a great life and all the things that I've learned. And I went to do my last part, like this last kind of edit thing that I had to do. And I went away to this mountain house by myself. I'm laying in getting a massage, and I had this supernatural experience. I mean, it was God Almighty. I hope it's okay that I'm saying that. But it was like incredible. And how you just know. So it was just a download. It was like, you have hidden your talent for far too long, Allison. And today is the day that you tell the truth. And I was not outwardly lying, but I led people to believe unknowingly that all of my expertise and, I was really good at what I did. I'm really good at, seeing things and being able to understand things. And it was it was not my 8 years of college. It was not all these years of experience with training therapists and being with clients. It was my own shame, my own fear, my own insecurity, and how that drove my life into situation after situation after situation after situation that gave me more fear, shame, and insecurity. And then my overcoming them, and how I learned through experience to overcome these tragedies, and really like a heart, like a lot of despair. So I'd be like, oh, despair again. Let me just climb myself out of this. So, I mean, I've had a lot of things, when I was young, I was born in, and I'm not telling you, but I was born into a family of intellects, brilliant people. My parents were so smart. My dad owned a movie studio, and he also owned a business that built scenery for plays, movies, commercials, Broadway shows. So I was around a lot of like elite, well-known people. But then at home, my parents were total hippies. And basically, it was all about freedom. So I was in an environment that was like the house on the block that I was totally ashamed of, humiliated by. My mom didn't wear a bra. She was like, but she was cool. She was smart. She was beautiful, but she was like very unkept, and so then I spent the rest of my life undoing that in my femininity. But my main point is that when you're neglected as a child, you learn a couple of things. And that was like the duality for me. The duality became that I learned incredible things. They had so much insight. So I learned all of that. I learned how to use my mind. But then I also learned that I had to do everything on my own because I didn't have anyone taking care of me.
So let me ask you a question real quick. So you had this moment where you really felt like God said, hey, listen, you've got to overcome this shame and this insecurity and this fear that's rooted in your childhood and your upbringing. What
No,
were some of the,
actually, that's not what happened.
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. What God said was, you have to share that. You have to tell them how you overcame it. Because basically you've had all these experiences. They think that it's from going to school. They think it's from you coming from a lovely Christian home. They think it's because you've got your shit together.
Wow.
And it's not.
Wow.
That's not the reason. So basically, all my clients have me on a pedestal, and so it separates me. But I didn't intentionally do it. It's just how you're trained as a therapist. You don't really tell people your life because it's about them. But I started to notice also that people never, I had a client say to me once, Allison, yeah, but I'm not you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not good. So what ended up happening was I went back into that book and I wrote all the stories that happened in my life. And there were, and I'm not going to go into them, but basically, I was sexually abused when I was started at 4 years old, intermittently throughout my young life. Then I was neglected. I was, and then that led me into being in bad relationships, which led me into living with someone who had drugs, money, guns, all of that. And I was a witness in a murder trial because the person who was at my house, a woman who was at my house, left with somebody, and I was the last person to know who she left with. So I had to be in the grand jury. I had to, witness in this murder trial. But all along, I'm a Christian. I'm getting a 4.0 in college, and I'm like living life. But I'm living this duality because in the background, these core beliefs, this belief system is driving my outcomes, and that's my whole mission. So that I moved into the rest of my life where I had a lot of other tragedies. I had a fiance who actually, which is interesting, committed suicide because this actually happened in my later life too. So, and I found him dead. So, but every time I had to like overcome these things. And I had this weird thing inside of me that I just always pivoted. As soon as something bad happened, I was like, this is bad. Like we're taught in the church, like refining fire, like you got to go through the fire. But you know what? There's also that distorted perspective that if you go through that fire, you got to lay in that fire, and then you stay there and you put this cloak of suffering and this victim mentality. And I don't buy it. Not at all. You walk.
Let me ask you this question. What inside you gave you the strength to walk through all of these sexual abuse, neglect when you're growing up, a couple suicides? Like what gave you where does the strength come from in you to look at that, Allison, and not just give up, not just wave the white flag and go, nope, I can't take this anymore?
Well, I've had moments where I felt like that, but in each of the situations, I felt like I had a choice, like it was a dividing line. And what gave me the strength? I would say it was God. I believed in God since I was a very little girl. I think it was a sovereignty. I believed forever. When I was 7 years old, I walked to church alone. When I was 13 years old, the church packed up and moved away, and all the people in it. And I went there and had no idea they left, because when you don't have parents, you don't get information. But I think there's I don't know what it is, but there's something in me. There's a spark inside of me that won't go out. So when something really bad happens, for some reason, in like a few minutes, it could be a day, maybe, I'm like, okay, I get to choose right now. This is what I say to myself every morning. I get to choose how I feel today. And today I choose, bam, I choose joy, enthusiasm. I get to choose. So in this moment, I remember, and something recently also happened, which, I guess I'm kind of not staying in order, but.
No, you're good. You're good.
So I make a quick decision that I can go this way or I can go that way. And I'm choosing the way of life. Because you know what? I remember saying to myself in a really dark time when I was young, like in my early 20s, I said, you have a choice, Allison. Maybe it was God who said it to me. You have a choice where you can choose to be destructive, because that was I felt leaning toward that, or you can choose to be productive. So one of the things I've discovered with pain is that pain is like it's like a chisel, and like I'm a rock. And like God is just, chiseling, like the pain, so we have a couple of choices. We can kind of like move away and then nothing happens, or we can stay still, or we can lean in. And I think I lean in and I'm like, okay, God, what is it? And every time, what is it that I am to learn from this? Because I know no matter what, that this is happening for me. I've always known that. I know that. I'm like, okay, why now? Because that day when I got that whole message from God, when he came and he was like, you're going to share the truth now. That's what you're going to do. So I worked for 3 days after that, from 5 a.m. until 10:30 at night straight. Like I was on fire. I'm like, I'm telling the truth now. I wrote it out. Do you know, day 3, I'm done. I'm ready to leave this mountain house. And my computer crashed. I lost every bit and it was soul work. This was not like, oh, I went to school and this is the practical thing. No, this was my heart.
What was that feeling like?
I'm going to tell you exactly what that feeling was, Ken. You ready for this? That feeling was this. It was like, holy shit, this has got to be happening for a reason. Right. That has to be. This is too much of a coincidence. Then I would go back and forth. God, my life is a mockery. How could you do this to me? So I'd go back and forth. I'd be like, so then I could cry even thinking about it. So I'd be like, okay, my whole life I believed that I was not like the other little girls who had the pretty princess bedrooms, but I would work my ass off harder than anybody else. I would get a 4.0. I'd be the one who did the thing, but I would get right up to the edge and I wouldn't get it. And that was my repeated experience, but it was my repeated experience because I believed it. So yeah, because beliefs drive outcomes, right? So yes. Now I'm believing this. So then I'm like, okay, God, you want me to get muscles with this again, and I'll do it. But I find it interesting that you've chosen to tell me this, and then you make it wipe away. It doesn't make sense. So now I don't touch my book again. Months pass, months. And then after that, which is odd as hell, that after that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start again. So then my husband committed suicide. So I'm like, what the, and I did not have a husband who was like the other people that I went out with. I had a great marriage. And he was 21 years in the military. He was like my best friend. It's hard. It's still hard.
Remember you and I talked a little bit about this when we were in Cancun on the way to the airport. You shared a little bit about this story. One of the things that, when I talked to you, I was actually on your podcast the other day, and we've spent some time talking. One of the things that I love about you is your resiliency. You just literally, you continue to bounce back. What would you say to our audience today, Allison, who struggles with being resilient? Or like you said, I had two choices.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times, even in my own life, I shared this morning on my call. Like, I've been separated and divorced for almost 2 years from my wife. I've got 4 daughters, 26, 23, 19, 13. I have not spoken to my 19-year-old in almost a year. My daughters are my life.
Yes.
Great weekend. I had my 13-year-old with me. Business is going great. Relationships are great. My kids leave my house yesterday at Father's Day. They were here with me for several hours. I cooked on the green egg and grilled out, and we had a blast. The moment they left and shut the door and I turned around, it was almost like I had an emotional crash.
Yes.
But I was like, I exactly what you're talking about. I'm like, well, crap. Like what it hit me out of left field. I wasn't expecting it, but I had to tell myself, no, you're not going there. Like you're not going there. What would you say to people, number one, who maybe didn't make the right decision and they have kind of, as we say in the South, wallowed in their misery? What would you say to those people that are stuck right there, Allison?
Oh my gosh, I know. The reason that I can say something is because I've tried it all. I know what it's like to wallow in it, and there are times, and you don't want to beat yourself up for that. That's what I want everyone to know. There's simple solutions to all of this. So it's like to me, the tragedy, the way I look at it, there's a tragedy, it's like, I got to just keep walking. So like when this happened in my life, it was like somebody literally detonated a bomb in my house. So I have my kids devastated, like it's just a disaster. So like, it's like, and it's rubble. I feel like there's fire everywhere. It's just like, what? So all I know is that I got to keep going. And, the days that are hard, this is the thing. And this is the thing I think that's difficult, is that refining fire, you don't just sit in the fire, but you walk through it. The only way out is through. Nothing changes until it becomes what it is. So in order to move through any difficulty, we never deny it, ever. This is a hard day. I remember my son said, like the second day, he said, Mom, he said, I have an idea. He's like, this is what we're going to do. He's like, when we have the pain, there's no shortage of pain. But when we have those moments where we're laughing, let's really maximize them. So let's do the thing. And there's a few things I want to say about it that are really important. I've had so much training in suffering. And I don't mean that like a martyr thing. And I see it as an honor. Because when you're trained in that, you can walk into any land. Like, I feel like I can walk into a land, I can stake my ground, I can go. I had an eating disorder. I was hospitalized for 28 days. You have an eating disorder? I'll walk right into that land with you. I'm going to sit with you. And then when you're ready, we're going to walk out. But what I want to say to somebody who feels like they're stuck, or they had this one long emotional response, because that's one of the things that happens. And that's my mission also. I have this thing where I say, you have to be awake and aware in the now without judgment. And what that means is that when you're awake, you want to know the truth. So being awake is being authentic. It's not pretending that you're not in pain. So I don't pretend to not be in pain. So it's when you're awake, I have people go through, and it's interesting because you do this, Ken, go through 7 areas of their life: spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, relationally, financially, vocationally, and just a snapshot of what that is. What's the facts? So it could be like, oh my God, I'm a widow. My life is this, and this is what it is now. This is how much money's in my bank account. It doesn't matter. You're $1 billion in debt. Whatever you are now, then there's no judgment. The next step is awareness. So in being aware, it's having the insight, the ability to look at that situation, not the situation, the driving factors that can keep repeating that situation. So what I love is that anybody who's struggling, look at it as information. Look at it, look for your patterns. So to me, I have a pattern. I have a pattern that says you can get right up to the edge of this success thing. You can get right up to the edge, but you're the girl who doesn't get to keep it. So now, and that's my, and shame is the driving factor. So when so no matter what, if we're not awake and aware in the now, like aware of our operating system, this whole body it's a record of memory. And what ends up happening is the listeners have probably heard this 1,000 times. I don't want to bore them, but we have like 90,000 thoughts a day, and 91% of them are the same thoughts we thought yesterday. And our body is designed to repeat, to conserve energy. So we are an automated operating system. So one of the ways that I overcome stuff is by I'm a wise observer. So I'm observing my thoughts that are distorted, because 91% of them are what I thought yesterday.
You know what's funny? Number one, I've heard the 90,000 thoughts, but I've never heard that 91% of those are repeated. I've never heard that before.
Yes.
Number one. And that's exactly
repeat yesterday.
It's exactly what I talked about this morning. Like when my kids left yesterday, I turned around.
Yes.
I mean, it was like, I'm like, well, where did that come from? So
You're gone again, Ken.
One of the things
gone again.
Yes. One of the things, that's exactly right. One of the things you said just a minute ago was this: driving factors that cause me to repeat
Yes.
behavior.
Yep.
What does
We all
somebody,
have
and you talked about you talked about getting in touch with your thoughts.
Yes.
What are some of the keys for people to be able to identify those triggers,
Yep.
those things that cause them to repeat the same behavior?
I'm going to tell you, it's cool, because the thing is if they're aware. So when you're awake, you look at your reality of your life. Then when you're aware, now you're a wise observer with insight. And you're not afraid. It's without judgment. So that's why I have without judgment at the end. You're a wise observer. So now you stop. So an example would be, you're in that situation, Ken. You suddenly have an overwhelming feeling, right? So you stop in that moment. And then you breathe. What people typically do, my big thing is, I try to teach people, I don't try, I do. I teach people how to create and not react. So basically, in a moment like that, you have an inner overwhelming experience. And what I call emotional sobriety is when a person does not, emotional drunkenness is when we react to that thing. And we blame outward, we do all sorts of things. Or when you look inward and you say, stop, okay, what is it? What experience just gave me the opportunity to feel what's already in there? Because it's in there. Because we have a lot of emotional experience, a lot of emotion that's buried alive, and we become addicted to the emotion that we feel the most. So your feelings that we've rehearsed throughout our childhood, we become addicted to. So the feelings so I ask people all the time, what was your predominant feeling in childhood? So because you will find that will return again and again. If you're not aware, nothing changes until it becomes what it is. And truth is the path, awareness, being awake. I'm sorry, I go crazy.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think, like when you talk about being awake and being aware, I love you say wise observer. Do you think that it's just so painful that people don't want to face the truth?
Yes, but I also think there's something else.
Okay. When
we're born, by the time we are between 2 and 7 years old, it's a very variety, we don't know exactly. There's 1.5 quadrillion synaptic connections that are the meanings that we've attached to every nuance that we've experienced in our life that came through our 5 senses. Every single thing that has come into our body, we have attached meaning to because we had to. So it's always running in the background. So we have tons of immature meaning in our life that is based in fear, or I don't want to be abandoned, or this means that this is bad, because we've attached it to it. So now, like for me, yes, I don't want to go to my husband's grave because I'm going to suffer and I'm going to sob and it's going to be horrible. That's one thing. But then when you all of a sudden out of nowhere have this flood of emotion, very often we have stuff inside of us. So it can be like you have the flood of emotion that you miss your kids, but then it can go, I like to go 7 more layers. Never just that, because that first thing is the tip of the iceberg. We lose our kids. We say, well, what does it mean to me that I lost my kids? What does it say about me? What is the underlying meaning that has been buried? So
walk me through how I should have processed that yesterday. That may be the best way to put it. How should I have processed that yesterday? So because you said something just a minute ago, and I heard you, and I'd already started talking, but you said your kids left again.
They did. You know what? The door closes and you're alone. Now, I don't want to be presumptuous and say that I know that, but when you back out and you zoom out, that's part of being a wise observer. We're so embedded in our operating system that we don't separate ourselves from it. So we just let it run things. And if we do that, we're going to end up in all the wrong places, or maybe some right places, but it doesn't. So like in that situation, you're just confused because you're feeling this horrible feeling, right? So, and then one of the interesting things we do, and I am going to answer your question. So let's say you have that really bad feeling, and then you look at your life and you're like, it doesn't make sense. What happens to us when we have a free floating feeling is that then we look for things to make it make sense. Oh, maybe it's because, yeah, I really am. I do suck, whatever. I don't know. But we look for reasons for free floating emotion. So, and emotion it returns. So I'm going to just, I don't know, I can go so many different ways, but basically the emotion you felt. I'll give you an example. So I'm going to answer your question. So basically what you said was, what would I suggest you do? So when a person is emotionally sober, when you have a strong emotion, you'd never go outward. People spend their whole lives, people run countries doing this, going outward when they feel something inside. How does it make sense to tinker out there when we have a problem in here?
Like when you say go outward, what do you mean? Like we're all of us listen, we're not therapists. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to
so what that is I'm looking around at my environment. Oh, so you could have gone different ways. Oh, they're gone. Or you could have went, oh, I have all of this. This doesn't make sense. Or, oh, I can't believe I'm mad at my ex, or why did this happen? Or, blaming. Very often we look, when we hurt, we look for a reason for the hurt, and we look for the next logical solution that isn't the truth usually.
So do we find, let me ask you this. You talked about, we always go to blame. Can we find healing in blame?
No.
Yeah.
So basically the healing is going inward, and even if you were horribly abused, you're not going to find healing in blame, because the first thing to understand is, what is it about this circumstance that I'm in? So the first thing I tell everybody is stop, breathe, and go in. Go inside and ask the right questions. So the quality of the question you ask yourself will be the quality of your life, basically. So what is it about that door closing and me standing here that hurts so damn much? Instead of saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Well, you do.
I did. I was like, wow, where did that come? I just did not expect that emotion to come on.
You were given a gift. That's a gift, because now in this, God knew we were going to meet. So now this conversation is, okay, how, wow, what is that? So we tend to go, let me brush that off, or let me roll into it. So then you look and you say, what is it about this situation that gave me this opportunity to feel this? What is this? And then the next question I always ask people is, so you have to feel the feeling, say, when was the first time I remember feeling something like this? You want to extract all externals from it and just isolate the experience, the feeling. And feelings you can do that. And when you do that, and let's say you remembered anything, usually we remember things that are closer, but if you go again, you say the very first time you felt it. People get confused by the feeling because they attach it to the circumstance. You have to take the circumstance out and just look at the feeling. Once you locate the feeling, what I do with people is I say, okay, so it could be, when I was sitting at my kitchen table and my mother and father were screaming at one another, and I never felt so alone. I'm making this up. So basically, at that moment, you want to go back and literally I go to the doorway with the client and I say, so what is that child feeling? And then they'll say, scared, never so alone, the same feeling. So they say, okay, so when you go into a memory, a story, because we all have stories in our body that is stored, and you reframe it in the context of love, the story changes. So remember I was saying that you have 1.5 quadrillion synaptic connections. Now, when you take that, you take the story is embedded with all this meaning, because children are egocentric. So children will attach their ownership to abuse too. So anytime somebody's abused or hurt or whatever, they will say they somehow share in the shame of it. Is this too much? Am I going?
No. This is phenomenal. Just processing through why we think and how we, like when we feel an emotion that we don't understand, like, where did that come from? Like literally yesterday for me, I'm like, where did that come from? Like, I did not see that coming at all. It was just, I want
to tell you something else. It's a big one.
Go ahead.
This is a biggie, doozy. Okay, so our bodies become addicted to the emotion. So let's just pretend that's a feeling that you had forever ago and it was ongoing. I'm not saying you did, but if you did, and now let's say you had this beautiful fun day, and now everything's different. Our body, it has to maintain homeostasis. It has to maintain a baseline. So our body will draw us back. It's like we withdraw from there's a lot of chemicals inside it. We go through withdrawal from emotion. So people can really get very far in their lives, and then all of a sudden they'll crash because their body is saying, no, 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 you back to baseline. But if you know that, that's why I say be awake and aware in the now, in the present moment. See, in that moment, if you just walked away from that, in the now, there's nothing scary, because all fear is future-based. All low self-worth was developed already. It's already developed in your body. So if you stay in the now and you address your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs right now, it's a very simple process, but it feels hard.
Does that get easier as you
Yes.
learn to practice those things, Allison?
Yep. And that's my big thing. Like it's big, and it's interesting because we have so many of the same things that we do. So my big thing is, you want to, first of all, you go through those different areas of your life. You become aware of the thoughts you think the most. So there's sentences, like you'll start to hear them. And as you're observing, so you want to be aware of the repeated thoughts, and then you start creating. So what happens is there's a whole network laid down that doesn't go away, by the way. And people think, oh, I can make those thoughts go away. You can't. So I just want to break that illusion. You cannot make them go away, but you can make them obsolete. And it requires repeated creation. So like, one of my favorite quotes is Alvin Toffler. He says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn again.
Wow.
And then I liken that to the scripture, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. They're the same thing. But we're conformed to the world we're born into. And that's all in our network. So now let's say we have a current day experience. That's why there's so much divorce. That's, because when people are screaming at one another, there's no adult in the room. So basically what I was saying, so then you're aware of what's happening in your operating system, right? So when you're aware of that, you're making repeated in the now. So you stay current. I always say, if you want to feel good, be current. Be it, any stress is about, I'm here, but I should be there. But if we're right here, head, heart, feet, you say something different, right? Head, heart, feet, but all in one spot. So did I answer your question? I answered so many.
I love that. I want to go back for you in the last few minutes that we have. I want to go back in when your husband committed suicide, and you were getting emotional just a minute ago talking about that.
Yeah.
Like, walk us through you're a therapist. You've been to school. You've been doing this for years.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're the person sitting on your couch.
It's unbelievable. That's the thing that makes me, because it's so unbelievable, that it makes me think there's purpose in it. So one of the things I decided very early on, it was like day 2, day 3, is that I will be damned. I'm going to gain more than I lost. I don't care how long it takes. So that's a decision. And once you make a decision, that's a power move. And that's what I did. And to walk through it, I basically was completely, utterly traumatized. I probably still have PTSD. I can walk into like a CVS, and out of nowhere, like I could be fine. And I'm like, have anxiety, it overtakes me. But so to walk through it, and also this is what I do for a living. So I have a lot of, I had kind of like an existential crisis about it, because I think, I had many thoughts about it, because I feel like I'm in this mental health movement. Nothing shuts me down. Like I just keep going, and it makes me, what God uses for evil, you bet, I don't mean
Yeah.
that. What the enemy uses for evil, God wants to use for good. And I feel like I am like relentless with that.
Mm.
But I wonder sometimes if it's just like evil got its way. Sometimes I wonder, because it's a
Well,
suicide mind.
we live in a world at war.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, this life is difficult. I think probably my biggest question to you, and I think our audience would love to hear from you, is after that, and after so many tragedies. I understand you talked about the purpose, and I think I heard Rick Warren say this years ago. You'll live out your life's purpose to the level at which you can withstand the pain.
Yeah.
Like, the deeper you go into your purpose, the more painful it's going to be. And I remember my ex and I, my oldest daughter's 26, was a year and a half or so. We were pregnant with twin sons. So I've got 4 daughters. We were pregnant with twin sons. We lost them 6.5 months into the pregnancy. Christy actually worked in labor and delivery. She was a scrub tech. So she scrubbed on C-sections and tubules and all that kind of stuff. Literally, she was out of work for 6 weeks before she went back to work. And literally within the first week, and what happened was, pregnant with twins, it was called twin to twin transfusion was the thing that was wrong, umbilical cord. And so 6.5 months, one was getting more nutrients, was a lot larger than the other. And it basically killed both of them. But I remember after her going, she wasn't even at work a week. And she had never seen this before in all the years she'd worked in labor and delivery. Within a week, somebody had this exact same thing that happened to her. And she was able to actually go and minister to that couple because we had just been through what we had just been through. And she was able to help them walk through this process because she literally knew the pain that they were feeling. Talk about that, and really pain, purpose in our pain, or seeing the purpose through our pain or through our difficult situations in our life.
I believe it's true. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think that basically pain is, when you walk through pain, to understand someone is to love them.
Mm.
And when people go to therapists all the time who really don't have any idea what they're talking about. And it's really, so to me, it's holding space for other human beings who are suffering. And what better way, honestly, what training ground? And that's what I feel like that message came to me. This is tell the truth of how you were trained. So, it's like I surrendered a very long time ago to God, and John Wimber would say, use me like coins in your pocket. And I used to say that, use me like, and no matter what it was. So I believe that. So what I find unbelievable is that probably a couple of months, it was a couple of months before my husband died. A woman contacted me. I spoke somewhere, and the woman contacted me and said, my husband is not well. He's just really depressed. And she said, what should I do? Should I go to work? And I said, no, don't go to work. Come in here today. And the guy had a whole plan to kill himself. Mm. And he didn't kill himself. And they're really super grateful, and it was wonderful. But I think about that, and I'm thinking, what made me tell her not to go to work? Mm. So now what made me not see that day my husband was going to kill himself, and it's the real thing is that you just don't know.
Mm. How did you process through the days after that? And was it you understood that because of your life experience and your training that there really is going to be purpose behind this pain, even though there's so much confusion, so much doubt, so much hurt? What gave you the strength and stamina to keep doing what you're doing?
Well, I think at first I was, devastated. Mm. And, I still am. So I think I was just like, you want to shake it away, like make it not real, but
right.
I couldn't. And I had key people say certain things to me, and just sit in pain with me and not do anything. Mm-hmm. And one person just said something. They said, And they weren't talking about me. She just was talking about herself. She said, you know, when my dad died, I lost my mom too. And she said, you know, I lost my mom because all the things that she did them with my dad. So then she stopped doing everything. So I heard that and I thought, I'm not doing that. Because that's was I didn't want to. I didn't want to watch American Idol. I didn't want to go to. So what I did was every Sunday we would walk on the boardwalk by the beach by our house, and that Sunday I walked on that damn boardwalk alone. You know, I watched American Idol. I didn't want to, but I'm like, I have to take back. I can't let his death take away my life. My life can't die with him.
What was, when you made the decision that you were going to gain more than you lost, talk about how that was a pivotal point in your journey back, not just as a widow or a mom or a wife and in a business owner and a therapist. How pivotal was that moment in your healing and recovery, walking through that situation?
Everything. I believe that a decision is a power move. And I think I just knew that inside of me. And I know, and I also, because of what I do, I believe in incremental change. I know that the first scoop of dirt to build a mountain is just as powerful as the last scoop of dirt at the top of the mountain. They're the same, they're equal. So I knew, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I'm like, so whenever I'm faced with something overwhelming, I'm like, okay, this is one thing what can I do now? Because I preach ad nauseum. Be awake and aware in the now without judgment. So what do? I'm awake. This is horrifying. I have to be aware of the traps that are going to come, because they're coming. The ones that say, you can't have good things, Allison. The ones that say, you know what? This is your fault, because shame always shows up like that. You know, somehow you've created this. Somehow you let him down. You know, all those words. I have to be in the now and make a decision, because a decision, if I throw neuroscience in it, is a very, very powerful thing. Because, and I knew that, you know, when you have like these neuron clusters that are each in charge of a particular decision, they're both trying to fire and inhibit the other one. I knew that if I made a decision and I married it, I stayed with it, that I could do something with this shit show of a life that just landed here.
Yeah.
Because I know I got to win. Somehow I got to survive. So that's the power move. Once you make a decision, your brain goes to work.
I heard a friend of mine say the word decide.
Oh,
literally, if you break it down, it means to kill off. The word side, the part of the word, the CIDE, is where we get suicide, homicide, all of the different, it means to kill off. So when you make a decision, you kill off all the other options. This is the only thing I'm going to do.
That's it. And the thing we were talking, we're talking about, I think, whatever, when we talked, staying, the power to stay. So that's it. Like, how long do you wait for a baby to walk? Jim Rohn says that. And it's like, until. So you know what? So anybody who's suffering, what I would say to them is like, hey, I put this scoop of dirt and there's 3 scoops there now today. And now the 4th day, I feel like total, utter garbage. I can't stop thinking about how I hate myself in my life. But you can pivot at any moment. You can become aware at any moment. So that's the gift of the now, right? But now people tend to throw it out once they go a little backwards. No, I just keep going. So when I'm looking at my road, I look at like, oh, it's rubble. And then it starts to get a little sunny and there's less bumps, but I keep walking. And then, wow, look, there's more fire here today, but I'm going to keep going. And now tomorrow there's baby neurons that are born every morning, you know? So like, tomorrow's going to be different. Sometimes I'll put myself to bed at 5 o'clock because I want the day to be over.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I love your transparency in that. We've been 50 minutes and we're just blowing it so good. The content, I'm gonna have you back. Cause I want to dig into some more of this, and the neuroscience part of it is absolutely blows me away, and how powerful our brain is. You said earlier, 90,000 thoughts a day. I've heard that before. but 91% of them are the same because our brains conserve energy.
Yes.
That is so if we can change
Yes.
the majority of our thoughts in a day, and as we do that and develop a habit in our brain, that means the negative thoughts that we used to have, or the self-judgmental thoughts, or the shame, the comparison, the insecurity, if we change those and flip the script on that, then that means in the future, those same positive thoughts are going to be which is why I talk about gratitude and affirmations every single morning. It's huge. It's a huge, huge part. Allison, tell everybody. Yep, go ahead.
Just a very quick thing, because I just want to piggyback on that. It's very important. Those thoughts keep coming, but if you just see them as just like a cloud passing by and you pivot away from them, because it's something called chain analysis where thoughts pop. So we follow them very quickly and we don't know we're doing it. That's why you have to be aware in the now. So you want to be able to, you create something new, which is much more difficult because you're being pulled to the other thought, but you keep doing it, you gain momentum incrementally. And you're literally, every time you think a thought, molecules in your brain change. And you're creating something. Okay, I know I'm going on and on. Yes.
No, you're good. Tell everybody how they can find out about you. Where can they follow you? Where can they get your new book that's coming out? Tell people how to get in contact with you, my friend.
So yes, you can get in contact with me on Allison Answers at Allison Answers in Instagram. I'm also TikTok at Allison Answers. Also Lager Counseling Services. It's like lager, like the beer. Go figure. I'm
like the beer, baby. Counselor. The good stuff.
Yeah. And basically, my book is The Wake Up Call, but it's not out yet. So it'll be out.
So stay tuned, guys. Listen, go follow Allison on Instagram. Like right now. Her podcast that she does, Allison Answers. It's Allison with one L.
Yeah.
Allison with one L. Allison Answers. She's got a phenomenal podcast where they talk about therapy. They talk about healing your mind and doing the things that she talked about, how to make the right decisions, how to kill off things that are really going to prohibit you from walking in your potential and in your purpose. Allison, I love you, girl. I'm so proud of you. Absolutely proud of you. Watching you take pain and turn it into purpose and being able to help, hundreds and thousands of people is amazing. And I'm honored and glad to call you my friend.
I want to thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. So I'm very grateful to you. It's a great privilege.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of As the Leader Grows with my friend, Allison Lager, therapist from New York City. We look forward to being with you next time on As the Leader Grows. If you would, if this has added value, man, smash that like button, subscribe, download, share it on your Instagram story. I will repost every single time. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you next time, as we love helping business